Some may know the Shawscope logo with its pearlescent background accompanied by a chorus of horns from movies produced by the Shaw Brothers Film Studio of Hong Kong from 1961 onwards. Many will only know it through its appearance before Quentin Tarantino's first Kill Bill. But what is Shawscope actually? Honestly, I thought it might just be a generic trademark representing the unique visuals of the studio, but Shawscope is a complete technological system for widescreen films that defined Shaw Brothers movies from the 1960s onwards, and reflects the nature of regional and international film production in the mid-century of East Asia. Let's get something clear first. Kill Bill's Shawscope splash was an homage, but a playful one, as the movie was not shot in Shawscope but Panavision. Tarantino was deeply influenced by cinema from around the world, and even created Rolling Thunder Pictures after his first two films to redistribute pictures, particularly foreign ones, that he thought were underappreciated to a wider audience. For Kill Bill, Tarantino explained that he watched between 1 and 3 Shaw Brothers movies a day while writing it, and wanted to honor the immersion and the effect that he felt the Shawscope intro provided and how this shaped his own filmmaking. Kill Bill's actual story and cinematography is fascinating. It was provided by Robert Richardson and detailed in an article for American Cinematographer. Tarantino wanted to create the biggest B movie ever made and combine all flavors of exploitation cinema. He had clear visions for different parts of the movie to reflect distinct genres, and even initially considered hiring 3 cinematographers, each tasked with creating part of that look, but settled on one for continuity. There's a lot of excellent content about the production of the film, but I'll leave that to the article. Tarantino was working backwards. He had a certain B-movie look that he adored, and wanted to create conditions that would produce such a film. The story of Shaw Brothers and Shawscope will play it forward, how the economic and historical evolution of the studio affected its productions, which defined its look. The Shaw family had interests in theater and entertainment since the 1930s, but really took off in filmmaking late in the 1950s amidst a very competitive film environment in Hong Kong. 150 to 200 movies were released a year in this period into a large and contested market. Movies produced in Hong Kong were distributed locally, as well as in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Taiwan, South Korea, and even to the Chinese diaspora in Europe and North America. Technological innovation was driven by the need to stand out in this crowded environment, and Shaw Brothers sought to refine not just the technology in their films, but also the processes used to produce them. In 1961, Shaw Brothers opened Movie Town, a vertically consolidated complex for film production with infrastructure to support production of multiple movies in parallel by up to 1,200 employees on site, with hundreds of beds available in company dormitories to keep a busy around-the-clock schedule. This allowed the studio to produce around 20 films a year during the 1960s in a wild array of genres, including the iconic wuxia and kung fu movies they would become famous for. These films were at the cutting edge of movie technology. This was greatly assisted by Japanese cinematographer Nishimoto Tadashi, who also used the Chinese name He Lan Shan. Nishimoto began his career at the Shin Toho Film Company in Japan before being sent to Hong Kong. His first trip helped establish color film in production in Hong Kong with Eastman Color, which was introduced in the 1950s as the first successful single-strip color film process, which could advance beyond the black and white that prevailed in the local industry in a cost-effective way. Technicolor, its predecessor, was a 3-strip process that necessitated special cameras which used a prism of light to split light into 3 distinct color channels, each exposing a different roll of film. Eastman Color exposed all colors on a single strip of film with layers of chemicals sensitive to different wavelengths of light, and therefore could be used with existing cameras. This collaboration resulted in the first Shaw film in color, Love with an Alien, in 1958, a collaboration between Hong Kong, Japan, and South Korea. Nishimoto's second trip to Hong Kong would begin an enduring partnership. This time, he brought another technological import, the widescreen Toho scope system. Toho scope was developed in response to CinemaScope, a pioneering widescreen technology originally introduced by 20th Century Fox in 1953 to compete with television during a period of sharply declining box office revenue. These systems captured images with anamorphic lenses, which exposed a wide field of view onto 35mm film that appeared squished horizontally. Corresponding processing and projection would then display the expanded wide image. Toho Scope was developed at the Toho Company by filmmakers who studied American widescreen productions, which were popular in Japan in the 1950s and 60s. Shawscope was based on the system, and though sources differ, the earliest Shawscope film in the 1960s is variously attributed to Les Belles or Empress Wu. David Bordwell, in a detailed analysis of Shawscope, closely examines the cinematic effects of the resulting system. Toho Scope utilized Kowa lenses in a configuration different from CinemaScope, permitting the use of a wide range of focal lengths and bold telephoto, in famous films such as Yojimbo by Akira Kurosawa, who shot many of his most famous movies with Toho Scope. The Shawscope system inherited Toho lens arrangements and was able to achieve similar effects, which according to Bordwell directly affected the look and pacing of its movies and their iconic stylistic choices. The article is excellent and I highly recommend checking it out. Orwell explores the influence on action scenes in particular, how the colorful costumes of on-screen figures and splatters of blood were vividly rendered, how editing techniques applied to create forceful moments, and the dynamic movements across the wide frame with zooms that emphasize the force of combat. Shawscope was established at the confluence of technologies and production talent, both domestic and international, and used in a long line of movies across many genres, some of which have become particularly highly regarded and influential. Though Shaw Brothers later switched to focusing primarily on television, the legacy of its film library and its defining camera system continues. Arrow Video licensed and is releasing box sets of Shaw Brothers movies in a product line branded with the Shawscope trademark. Shawscope was an advanced film system developed in a local cinema market responding to both regional and international trends that produced a way of seeing and displaying the world that persists in glorious fanfare.